So this is Baruch Flashman, and this is my second time going through this piece of Torah um, because I forgot to record it when I learned it with Michael Brusa. So I'm going to say it again. And there's such good things inside of this that I want to, not going to hurt me. Let's look over here, and this is the puzzle we're working on. Shisha Shinin Alfi, excuse me, that's not the one I want to read. It's this one. Shisha Alfi Shinin Talin Bashita Kadamoy. And we said that it was 1,000 years to one of the days of creation. Now, begin this year that I said before, I saw something that we had learned uh, in the Tiv on Rosh Hashanah, where over there he said like this: you went through 6 days of creation, and at the end of he said 3 hours before Shabbos, which is the sixth day of creation, Adam and Rishon and Chava messed up. And as a result of that, the previous six all got put into the fact that they had their yichud during the weekday and not on Shabbos. If they would have had the weekday on Shabbos, everything would have been complete, and they would have brought all the Shefa into this beautiful, beautiful world. But of course, it was destined that they weren't going to be able to handle it. And they got involved in tivus. And as a result of that, they couldn't hold back, and they had intercourse during the weekday. So now what happened was that you generated from that point that those 6 days have to be rebuilt. That's the tikkun. And we are in the tikkun elevator call out, and we're trying to do something about bringing this up. So that's what this limit is all about. So he says that we're going through now the process because that's Adam and Chava in the highest possible level that you could see them. But once they had this intercourse, that we see from other places that they began the mixture of taiva, which is this nahash inside of them, which mixes everything with good and bad. That's what it means to have the eat of the tree of good and bad. Because what happens is now everything is relative to whatever you're doing, and it's taking 6,000 of our years to make up for the 6 days of creation that we didn't come to fulfillment with. We're just at the tip of it, and that's where we're at. Now let's go over here. We have this is a deeper piece, and let me again. The phrase that we're working on is Shita Alfi Shinin Talin B'Shita Kademoy. Right. So he says, let's look over here and let's get into it. Do as best I can because, like I said, it's my second time. And I'm out of town. It's part of the reason just it's so hard for me to get organized. So he says, let's look at this concept. How is it? That's basically the question that I was trying to answer with the Rosh Hashanah piece. Is how the Alofim, how this the concept of excuse me, he didn't say that yet, of the 6,000 years develop. Where do we get this from? So he said, Ve'anpen, Zir Anpin mitzad atzma by himself, looking at him personally. Yesh bo shem ma echad. He is the name Ma. Yud Vav Dalet Ke Aleph Vav Aleph Vav Ke Aleph Shem Ma Ba'acharayim Yesh Bo Vav Alafim. Then he has an Acharayim. So the Panimi is the name Ma, which is a gematria 45, and the Acharayim is going to look different. Vehain Sod Shisha Alafim Shana, and this is actually, if you want to know the secret of the 6,000 years, it has to do with these Vav Aleph. Rebbe Eitz Chaim. So look over there. We're going to go through these different kinds of ideas and try to learn something about the concept of Aleph as well. V'zel Lashono Od Yesh Defarash. So we have this to explain. Gezer Anpin Hu Shem Ma Dolafim. He's the name Ma of Alafim. Of Acharayim Sheyesh Bo. He has a Acharayim. Acharayim goes along with the concept which we call a Ravua. Ravua is continuously going back to the beginning of the spelling of the name. It's a backwards idea. So it goes like Yud, and he's showing you how it's spelled out. Yud, Yud, Vav, Yud, K, excuse me, well, Yud, Yud, K, Vav, Yud, K, where are we at here? Vav, K. Now, if you go back to this name and you start counting, right, you're going to see that each one of them has an olive. He hits all these olives in. If you add all the olives up, he says Adkan. So here we are. Let's get up here. Adkan. So there are 6 olives in the Revua part. So the Ruvu part refers to that part which is going to the Nukva Zeranpin. Then he goes and he says like this. Re'av Rachel call Echad Bechem Nikra Olam. Now there's a word Olam is applies to them, and it applies to also Zeranpin. So we call Echad Bechem Ne'amar Shish Alfi Shinin Have Om. So he said about each one of them, that is both Leah and Rachel, the two wives of Zeranpin, he says each one of them has 6,000 years. He said, so each one of them has a shem ma ba'acharim, as we just showed you up above at the top of the page. So there's 6 olives in it. And that name has 6 different olives in it. So we see here that there are 2 different times when we find vav. One time is by Leah, one time is by Rachel. So let's look like it like this. Zer Anpin has 2 simple mods. That is Yud Vav Dalet Ke Aleph Vav Aleph Vav Ke Aleph. V'chan Nekuvim Lev Rachel Heba B'chinas Acharayim, but that they have each name has 6 by itself. The Zer Anpin. So he has a ma for her, and he for Leah, and he has a ma for Rachel. So therefore, there's going to be 6 different names of ma, 6 different mas that we're dealing with here. Rebbe Eitz Chaim says like this: Od yesh the farish. So we have to explain this further. Al Leah v'Rachel. I should call achas nikra olam. So we're going through the same words, but more of the root of where the idea comes from. Keniska Bezoyer V'Yetze, al Pasuk, and this is how he says that this is where we can find the root of the idea. Mina Olam V'Ada Olam, it says one universe to the next. This refers to the 2 mothers. Called Olam B'Menu V'Volofim V'Ainyan, and each one of them has 6,000. But it actually could be, as he's going to show later, could be 6 olives. Or excuse me, that's what it is. So because the women represent the acharayim, or the revuah of the man. That's in Olam Atzilus. And this is a very important idea to remember. Is that remember that the milk is on the back of Zeranpin. So what is on the front of Zeranpin, which is the name Ma, gets translated over to her to become the shem the revuah of the shem ma. V'nimsa ki shem ma who pasha believe revuah b'zer anpin. In zer anpin, it's just the pashat ma. But in the nekeva yiya revuah acharayim shema. But in the nekeva it'll be the revuah, which is the acharayim. Asher bo shisha alpha alaf, which has, of course, as we say, it has 6 aleph in that name. So that's one way to understand 6 aleph. Now the word aleph itself, as I said previously, unfortunately I'm repeating myself, but the word aleph is the letter aleph is very mutable. It is about to see in the next paragraph. He says the nimsa ki leah, which is really the word. Well, it has an aleph in the middle, but that's what I was going to do. Aleph K to K. Okay, anyway, hu shem ma da acharayim dezah. So therefore, Leah is going to be an acharayim. And in that acharayim, there are 6 olives. You're also going to find 6 olives there too. Now, between them, you get 12. So maybe that's the arch of the concept of 12. That just threw that in. Okay, let's go on. Number Dal. Zer Anpin Nikra Olam, Yesh Shem Mash, Yesh Bo Gimel Alof Kazah. So in the Zer Anpin, there is also, we have Nikra Olam, Yesh Shem Ma, and then Sheyesh Bo Gimel Alofim, the Ma always has 3 Alofim in it, and here it is, Yud Vav Dalet Ke Aleph, Vav Ke Aleph. You can see the 3 olives there. Let me put this up so we can keep reading. So he says Olam Yesh Bo Shem Ma. Sheyesh Gimel Alofim Kazat. So then he shows it to the call Aleph Yesh Beis Siurim, but every Aleph has 2 different forms. Echad B'Suras Yud Vav Yud, and that's what we're going to see down below. There it is there. And Beis B'Suras Yud Vav Dalet, which is over here. V'nimsa ki yesh b'chem ma shem ma. So it comes out in Ma. There's actually 6 different olives. Vehem Sod Vav Kitzvos Shel Zer Anpin, which is also the concept of the six Kitzvos of Zer Anpin. And this actually, at the very early stage of its creation, these olives actually represent the forces of the right, the forces of the left, different kinds of forces like that, and they all must be at the us way down here. Reba Sefer Alakutim, Bezel Shalno, Bezer Anpin, so this one says like this, in Zer Anpin, there's a shame Mad Olafin. Veshaza Enu Lokeach Hamochem Ala Ayedera Ima. See, because Zer Anpin only gets his Mochem through Ima. V'imihi Aleph Kazan. The Ima looks like this. Ima is an Aleph like that. And also, which is spelled Yud Vav Yud. And then it says Yud Vav Dala Kazan. Ima has apparently, she has two forms. Let me read this again. V'hem Gimel Alafim. Now, a Gimel Alafim, the V called Aleph Yesh Bo Beit Siurim. Now, let me see if I can get this off a little bit. Okay, let's go back. We'll go back further. Ubir Ubezer Anpin She Ma Dolafim. You find there the name of Ma of Olafim. The Fisha Zechah Be'enu Lokeach HaMochim Ela Ayadei Ima. So all the Mochim come to Zer Anpin from the dimension Panini to him, which is Ima. V'imihi Aleph. She's an Aleph. So he says, etc. She apparently Ima represents this letter Aleph. We have to talk about the Aleph. The Hem Gimel Alafim. Now there are three Alafim. The Ki Harishon Aleph. Excuse me. Ki Aleph Yesh Lo Beis Siurim. Now let's try and understand this. It has two Siurim. One is Yud Vav Yud like this, and the other one is Yud Vav Dalet like this. Ve'eluchem the Vav Kitzvos Shel Zer Anpin. So these appear in the Vav Kitzvos as Zer Anpin. The Hem Shisha Alafim. Over there, you see that there are six of them. Kihu Gimel Alafim, because what we have is there are three owls. We call Echem Mechem Yesh Siurim, because again is Ma. Ma has three olives in it. So Zal has three olives, but each one of the olives appears in two different forms. Just like the Zer Anpin has two eyes, whereas Eric Anpin has only one eye. So Zer Anpin has two eyes, so he has two nostrils. The Zer Anpin has two ears, so he has two sides. He has one mouth. All whatever is inside of Zer Anpin comes out. But the two eyes represent one side is white, one side is red, so it represents the possibility of Rachamim or Din. So that's Zer Anpin, and here we see these two olives. Zohare Shisha Lafim. This is Shisha Alfe Shenin Havi Alma. This is the concept of the 6,000 years the world will live. Valechem Omad Kiyam Oilam, and on this, then you say that the world is continues this way. Shuhu Zer Anpin Anikra Olam, which is Zer Anpin called Olam. So I'm doing the best I can. This is my second reading, and let me try to make sure I can get this in the page. We'll keep going. Number Hey, it says Shisha Alfe Shenin Hein Sod Shisha Lafim. It's a secret of six olives. Shall Pasuk Rishon. So he says, if you look in the Pasuk of Rishon, the first words are buried within them this concept of this olive. The word are count them up: Bereshis Bara Elokem Es, and the Hes Hashemayim, which has no olive. The Es Haaretz, those are six olives. Rei b'Sefer Lakutim, over in the Sefer Lakutim, it says Shisha Alfei Shenin Havi Alma. Yesh Vav Olafim b'Pasuk Rishon. So there's Vav Olafim in the first pasuk. The Haaretz shall the pasuk Hasheni. So when you go to the next pasuk, it says the Haaretz. That's the seventh one. That's the Aleph Hashvi Haishatohu Ovo. Now we've been through this a little bit, and here's we're talking about the elimination of the world, the physical world of Asiya as we know it, and the Aliyah of Asiya to the Olam of Bria. This is a completely different dimension. It's nothing to do with this world. This world will be like looking at it and you see it's silly. But that's where we live. He says, Allah shall tohu vo ad kan ein sham v'kein v'kan feyona. So we have the same idea. Let's go to number Vav. Number Vav says, Shisha alfei shenen heim sod Shisha lafim. So the 6,000 years is actually the secret of the sixth olives. Which olive shall Shisha kitzvos chesed gevurah teferes netzach hod yisod. So he's saying you're rooted within inside of them. At first he said, down at the bottom of the previous page, that on the phrase Bereshis Bara Elokem, you see six olives. So there's an olive all the way at the very beginning. This Aleph, he said previously in number Dalet, is actually represents Ima. So therefore, it mentioned it within the more physical dimension of the words themselves is an energy source that's coming from a dimension beyond it, which is called Aleph. Now, here we see it over this in a different way. So he says, Shisha Alfa Shinin, Hamasod Shisha Alafim, it's the secret of the six olives. Shashisha Kitzvah, Schesa Gabor, Tiferes Netzachog Yisod, there's six olives there. Keep it called Sifra Yesh Os Aleph Achas, because every Sifra has to have, my words has to have, but every Sifra has one Aleph in it. Haromeza the Tikkun Maskala Shana Asiba, which is the concept. Each one has a part of a maskala in it. Now, what's a maskala? It's a balance scale. A balance scale means that there's a right line, there's a left line, and there's a middle line that balances them. So he said, we're coming to Rosh Hashanah, which is the beginning of the middle line. So he says, Ki ba'os aleph b'tzuras yud vav yud. So let's take the aleph that's in the form of a yud vav yud. He said, Yesh gimel kavim. It has three different lines. A yamin, small, and emsa. That's our maskala. A row of maskala is mishkal, a weigher, something that balances. So he says maskala. That's a little just Aramaicized a little bit. Maskala. Rom is the tikkun gimel kavim shal maskala, which is a reference to the sixth kav of the maskala. The nimsa, what they said, the gimel kavim, the three kavim of the maskala. Again, once again, right, left, and center. Nimsa b'sheish siras yesh sheish alafim. So it comes out like this. These alafim are in each one of the spheres. Each aleph represents the maskala. Again, it's yud and then another yud on the far left, and then the vav in between it that balances those two yuds. Ki b'sheish spheres shel sheish alafim shemekayim misaktim olam v'hem so sheish alafim, which is the secret of the. Okay, I lost some of it. I don't know, for some reason I stopped it. Who knows what? I lost some. I'm sorry, but I'm not going to do it a third time. So let's look at number hey here. So I can give a synopsis a little bit. The last thing that I said, if it wasn't recorded, was that the Aleph is an extremely mutable letter. If we consider that the light of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu shines within this Aleph, then it could either be in the form like we see over here. It could look like this in two different paths that way, or it could just be manifest into lines. So now we see different. What is the lines? The concept of line is that the Aleph, this letter right here, is if it looks like this, then you have a line here, a line here, and a line here. And this would be, we say like this. This is Chochmah, this is Bina, and this is Das. This is the right line, this is the left line, and this is the middle. And you see this every place, the concept of the threes of the balance scale. Now that we call the maskala. Maskala is the word mashkala. So in Aramaic, we seem to translate the shin, it goes into a taf in Aramaic. So therefore, it's called the maskala. That's the way I pronounce it. Now, if you're Sephardi, maybe you call it matkala. I'm not sure, but I like maskala. It sounds good to me. So that's the way I've heard it said. That's the way I say it. Let's look at number hey. Let's get some ideas, and maybe we can make a conclusion here, because somehow I managed to miss a whole bunch of this here. But to stop it recording. Shisha alfi shenin heim sod hamshaman shel sheshes alafim shab. So 6,000 years. This is the secret of the neshamas of the 6,000 years. So he says what? Again, Shisha alfi shenin. That phrase, our phrase, 6,000 years. It's the secrets of the neshamas of those 6,000 years. Shosharsha b'shisha alafim, because the root of the neshamas is in the six olives. He says, Gimel Alamas Bri Yitzim in the Sia. So it looks like this. This is called Bia. Okay, Bri Yitzim in the Sia. So in Bia, each one of them individually, it has two olives in it. Olam Yeshne Alafim. Aleph Echad Keneged Abba Ve'ima. So this is another way to see it, that Abba Ve'ima have a concept of an Aleph within it. Shall Osam Olam. And how do we know this? We knew this from the previous one where we showed, and we'll say it again if that was cut off. He said that what you could take within the five Chasadim and the five Gevuros are located in the Das of Eric Anpin, and the divided there through the Yisod of Abba Ve'ima, but in this case we'll just call it Ima, which is Bina. So inside of that Yisod, inside of the Yisod are Chasadim, the Das, and the Gevuros, the Das. So they come into Das and they spread in the Zeranpin. So now, and they build Zeranpin and the Nukva. So he says that you could analyze it like this. Each one of the five has 10, can be broken down into 10 chasadim. So there's 50. So then each one of those 50 can be broken down to 10. That's 500. So you have 500 gevuros and 500 chasadim. This is what he says. But here's another way to look at this. He says there's also this power of this Aleph. That's how I'm thinking about it. Also appears in the two-part Sufim involved in Atzilus, which are called Abba Ve'ima. So they're there in Abba Ve'ima, which are the progenitors of their children, which are Zohar Beno. So it's such a big fishnei of the Neva Sheesh Gam Bechem He Chasada Ve'He Gevura. So we can count it out like this: Ha'olim the Mispar Elef, which we learned in the one before this. Them Shnei Olafim the call Olim. So therefore we see that there are two Olafim in each world. Shem Shisha Olafim, which are 6,000. This is a translation of how you get to the 6,000 down in our world. Shlosha Olamos Bri Yitzira Nasiya, and they spread down to the Abba Ve'ima and the Zachar V'Nok in each one of these worlds. And there we wind up in Olam Atzia, where we are, where it's really scattered. Wumavur Bashar Pasukim, so there's a lot more. And Mitzvah Hashem tomorrow, I am on the road, and that's the reason why I'm just trying to get organized, and I'm not that good at getting organized. So anyway, this is Baruch Flashman. I am at the Tikkun Elevator Call, and thank you for learning this year with me.